Hello and welcome to second lecture of object-oriented programming using Java. So if you recall, in the previous lecture we learned what is an object-oriented programming language and what is the difference between the procedural languages and object-oriented programming languages. So in object-oriented programming language we introduced two new concepts which is called object and a class. So in object-oriented programming language we can create the objects and we can create the classes. Besides this, that we can also follow some principles like encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. So let's learn what are these four pillars in this lecture. So if you recall, in the previous lecture we learned there are four basic pillars of object-oriented programming language. One is called encapsulation, other one is called abstraction, third one is called inheritance, and the fourth one is called polymorphism. So let's see what is encapsulation. So encapsulation is to enclose the properties and method into a class. So if you enclose the properties of any object and methods of any object into a class, this phenomena is known as what? Encapsulation. So for example, if you look at this unit, in this unit we enclose some methods and variables into this unit. So this phenomena is known as what? The encapsulation. So to define, we encapsulate related method and properties in one unit. This phenomena is known as what? Encapsulation. Another definition of encapsulation is to hide the data. So now how can we hide the data inside the class? So we can hide the data with the help of access modifiers like public, private, and protected. Well, when we will cover this chapter in depth, so we will explain what is public, what is private, and what is protected. But right now, just understand like this is, for example, if I'm an object, so there are so many things which I want the public know about me. For example, my name, my hobbies, and so on. But there are some of my data which is very private, so I don't want others to know about it. And there are some issues or the data which I want my parents to know about me, right? So if anyone can know about me, that is called public. If just I know, it's called private, and just me and my siblings or my parents know about me, that is called protected. So similarly, in any class, we can make some variables as a public, we can make some variables as a protected, and we can make some variables as a private. So this phenomena is known as what? Encapsulation. No worries if you don't know about this. So hopefully when we will jump to a chapter called encapsulation, so we will learn in depth and we will learn programmatically, practically, what are these and how to interact with these public, private, and protected variables. The other important pillar is abstraction. So what do you mean by the abstraction? In abstraction, we hide the complexity. So what do you mean by to hide the complexity? So we just only show that particular specifications or which are needed at the time. So we hide other complexity. So for example, if you have ever interacted with MS Word, so you normally create the files and save the files or open the files. So for saving a file, we just click on a file and click on a save button. So the file is automatically being saved on a hard drive. So as a user, we are unknown to it how it is going to save on a particular location of the hard drive, right? Or when we open a file, so it comes into the RAM. So what is the process of coming, the file content to the RAM? We don't know about it. We just are, we just click on the open button. It is automatically open on our screen. So the depth or the implementation or the complexity is hidden from the end user. So this process is known as what? The abstraction. So in object-oriented programming language, we usually write a code where we hide the complexity, or we just want to show that is essential information which is needed by a particular object and hide other details. So for example, now there are two types of abstraction. One is called the data level abstraction and the other one is called the process level abstraction. So if you talk about the data level abstraction, so for example, if I'm making a banking application, so I need to of course add the information of a particular account holder. So I have so much options to store the account holder information, like I can store his or her name, address, contact number, tax information, favorite food, favorite movie, favorite actor, and favorite band. But for bank application, I just want to store these information, but this information is not needed for a particular banking application. So this is called the data level abstraction. So I just keep on those variables which are needed for a particular banking application. So another one is the process level abstraction. So take an example of this code snippet which is shown on the screen. So for example, I want to calculate the student CGPA. So for that I just need to call a function called or a method called calculate CGPA. So for example, std1 is the object of the student class whose name is Mustafa. So I want to calculate the CGPA of the Mustafa. So I just need to write std1.calculate CGPA. So how the program calculates the CGPA is hidden from the end user. So end user just can click on a calculate CGPA. The CGPA will be calculated automatically. So this is called the process level abstraction. So now, what is the difference between abstraction and encapsulation? We learned recently these two concepts. So abstraction is a design level process and encapsulation is the implementation level process. So the third process, pillar of the object-oriented programming language is inheritance. In inheritance, what is the definition of inheritance? In inheritance, child class inherits the characteristics from the superclass. So for example, look at this picture. So in this picture we have three classes: text box, select, control and checkbox. So if you look at these three controls or three classes, all these three controls or classes have some common properties and methods like hidden, inner HTML, click and focus. So rather than putting all these properties and methods individually to all the classes, what I can do is I just can create the superclass which is called HTML element. I put all the common properties and methods into this superclass, and the subclass actually inherits these properties and methods from the superclass. So this phenomena is known as what? Inheritance. So inheritance is the special is a kind of relationship. What do you mean by this? So for example, wherever you find this keyword is a, so understand this is the inheritance relationship. For example, Mehran is a car, student is a person, teacher is a person. So you see, so is a common keyword here. So this is the indication that there is the inheritance relationship between the classes. So this is another example of the inheritance. So we have a superclass called person, we have subclass student, teacher and doctor. They are inheriting all the characteristics and methods of the superclass called person. So if you look at this student has two variables, program and study year, but because it is inheriting from the person class, so it will take these three characteristics from the inheritance. So in total, the student class is 5 variables: program, study year, name, age and gender. Okay, so the fourth pillar is polymorphism. Polymorphism is a Greek word which means many forms. Poly means many and morph means structures. So for example, take an example again of these three controls: text box, select and checkbox. Each of these control has a common method called render. But if you talk about the rendering of text box, select box or checkbox, each control can be rendered in a different way. For example, this is the select box. So it is rendered like this. This is the text box. It is rendered like this. Checkbox, it is rendered like this, right? So render is same, but the implementation is different depending upon with what object it is being called. So this is called the polymorphic behavior of the render object, method. Okay. So polymorphism, there are two types of polymorphism. One is called the static polymorphism and the other one is called the dynamic polymorphism. Static polymorphism occurs at the compile time, while the dynamic polymorphism occurs at the runtime. So static polymorphism, the example of the static polymorphism is method overloading, and the example of the dynamic polymorphism is method overriding. So if you talk about method overloading, we just, for example, have the same method with the same, we have the method with the same name. Like there are three methods, all these methods have the same name, add and add, but have a different parameter list. So in this add method, there are 2 parameters. In this method, there are 3 parameters. In this method, there are 2 parameters but of a double type. Okay. So these all 3 methods have the same name but different in the parameter list. So this is a typical example of the method overloading. So this is the static polymorphism. This is the example of the static polymorphism. Other example of the polymorphism is method overriding, which occurs at the runtime. So if you look at this example, so we have a draw method. So if we call this draw method with a circle class, it will draw a shape like this. If we call a draw method with a line class, it will draw a method like this, shape like this. If we draw call a draw with a rectangle class, so it will draw a rectangle like this. So this is this shows the polymorphic behavior of the draw method depending upon with what object it is being called. So in this lecture we learned what are these four pillars: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. Because it's an introductory lecture, I just told you what is this. Of course, when we go on, when we study the detailed chapter of encapsulation, we will learn how to implement the encapsulation. We will learn all these details: abstraction, and inheritance, and polymorphism. So we will, no worries if you haven't understood like till now what are these, and if you have any confusion, no worries. Stay tuned. In the rest of the lectures, we will cover in detail what are these four pillars and how to implement this. So thank you so much. See you in the next lecture.